Nice to be with you today. Let me start with a bare fact, a fact that most of the company managers and technologists and, let's say, safety specialists can agree with me about. Well, the manufacturing companies in the fashion supply chain have been under a unprecedented and terrific pressure in the last few years and still are. Managers and entrepreneurs in the supply chain of fashion had to, for example, learn a lot of new acronyms, MRSL, PRSL, had to use new tools more than ever before. Again, we have a lot of acronyms. I hope all of you knows the meaning of life cycle assessment, LCA, environmental product declaration, EPD, etc., etc. A number of new standards have come out. ZDHC, zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, new campaigns from NGOs as the detox campaign has surfaced and had a very big impact on the industry. Well, so companies are being under pressure from a number of different point of views. But, well, let me tell you, I have a message for you. This is not something which is transitory. This is not something as a typical fashion fad that will change in a few years and we can go back to the previous world. What we are in front of is a paradigm shift, a great change. Things have changed in very short time, in something between 5 to 7 years. So very quickly and in a very fast way. And we cannot think of going back to the good old world, to the good old paradigm. This is what, this is the first message I want to sell to you. We are in a new world, and what is this change, this new world compared to the old world all about? Well, to understand the change, we have to know something about chemicals, because let me tell you, in this change, chemicals have been in the last 5 years a major concern, a major concern. There is no big brand or manufacturer that has escaped the issue of producing with safer chemicals, producing with more environmentally friendly chemicals. So chemicals has been at the center of this paradigm shift in the past years. So what this change has been all about? Well, chemicals are a key and critical factor for fashion. They are at the basis of all these nice and beautiful effects we want to have on our clothes in terms of touch, color, brilliance, and all of that. So they are an important part of fashion. In the old paradigm, what it used to be 5 years ago, 7 years ago, is that, well, we need, this was the thinking of the industry, the mainstream of the industry. We need to use these chemicals, even though they are hazardous. They can be harmful for human health and for the environment. We need to use them because people want those special and beautiful fashion effects. And the solution was seen in a very simple way. First, let's use them. We know they are harmful, but we can clean up the waters, the wastewater outflow from the industry. This is called what is as the, let's say, the end-of-pipe approach. you use bad chemicals, okay, and you clean up the impacts at the end of the process. And this was the first main point. And the second is, well, these chemicals are harmful, are hazardous, great, but we can accept some level of these chemicals on the clothes, in the air we breathe, in our boards, in the houses, in our closets, okay, in the waters. There is a level which is low enough to allow for the use of these chemicals. This was the old approach. And let's say that the industry, along with also consumers in a way, the industry has been part in building the problem of the chemicals' impact on the environment and on human health. So we can say that industry has been part of the problem of creating an impact for chemicals. What is the new approach? The new approach is the only way to be sustainable with hazardous chemicals is not to use them. So the total elimination of this kind of chemicals. So there is no acceptable level. But on the other hand, we cannot give up on fashion. We cannot give up on those marvelous fashion effects, colors, touch, etc., etc. So how we can solve this equation when on one hand we have to eliminate these hazardous chemicals, on the other hand we need a substitution, other chemicals that are safer, that can substitute the oldest one. Well, in this new perspective, what can be the role of the industry? Someone says, well, industry is evil. Big brands are evil under this aspect. They cannot be part of the solution. They have been part of the problem. So this question is especially interesting. But I think that we have to give another type of answer. Nowadays, today, in the current situation, the answer is if a company is not part of the solution, so it is not pushing the market and the supply chain to use safer chemicals, well, the point is this company is, or let's say, let me be optimistic, will be not in the far future, in a few years, maybe in a few months, out of the market. This is what happens on the market nowadays. Let me just show you I'm an economist. Let me show you some number or statistics about that makes very clear what I mean. Well, in this chart, you see the 28 world largest fashion brands. The green or gray ones are the companies that have clear commitments in sustainability, and they have plan of eliminating hazardous chemicals and many other things. The red ones are brands that don't. Well, you see how the landscape is. If whatever manufacturing company want to sell to the market, they are in front of this situation. With all this brand, you need to be compliant with safer chemicals. So there is no story. I mean, this is the second message. There is no way relationship with along the supply chain can be good, bad. There are many complaints, but nowadays it's mandatory to be compliant with a safer chemical system. Well, having said that, I hope this is pretty clear. There is no way. Let me insist, because quite often talking with entrepreneurs, I found answers such as, well, let's wait. We don't want to be the first one, the most advanced. We don't be cutting edge. Let's follow. There is no way. Either you are on the forefront, especially if you are in Italy, especially if you want to be on excellent, as we used to say, you have to be there. Okay? Well, let me talk a bit about two consequences of this change, of this paradigm shift. The first is positive, as always when you have a paradigm shift. This paradigm shift in a very short term has triggered a new wave of technological innovation from the chemical manufacturers. Things that used to be considered as impossible, not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, now have become the standard for the industry. Let me just make a very short example. Working with our customers, when we started to talk about this whole issue, let's say 5 years ago, in the context of the Greenpeace detox commitment, well, I don't know how many of you knows the term APOs, alkylphenol ethoxylates. I know that it's a bit of exoteric term. Is harmful chemical, that can engender changes at genetic level. Okay, well, our customers were saying we cannot avoid to have them on fabrics. It is impossible. 5 years later, and by the way, the level accepted at that time was 500 parts per million. This was the standard in the industry. Nowadays, 5 years later, not 20 years later, the same customers working on silk and cotton, and in some cases also on wool, they found APOs not detected. And nowadays they are measuring at 1 part per billion, not 500 parts per million. There are a number of other examples, for example, in the field of dye stuff. You know very well, I think, that dye stuff for colors such as black, brown, or marine blue had a lot of heavy metals inside and many other dangerous chemicals. Well, there has been a huge progress in those years. In this field, we have also some price problem, but in a few years, I think, the price of the new heavy metal-less products will go down certainly. Well, so first consequence, very good. The second one is a nightmare, and because of the speed of change, things are processed in a very confusing way. We are in a landscape with a lot of fog. Things are unclear. I already shown you before that slide with all these things that the managers has to take into consideration. Let's try to just very quickly to map all these issues. We have a basic layer that is made by norms, laws. All of you know very well the REACH regulation. There are a lot of national regulations about wastewater. We have California Proposition 65 and blah, 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 a lot of them. But now we have voluntary standards that are introduced and accepted by companies without any norms of law mandatory points. Well, but in this case, we have a mess. We have a number of different types of voluntary standards. We have the good old, well-known certifications that were the only way to deal with these topics in the past. Now we have industry standards, ZDHC, zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, which is nowadays currently very spoken out. AFRIM, in Italy we have the Camera Nazionale della Moda guidelines and a lot of them. Then we have a plethora of brands' own, quite often inconsistent MRSL. And then we have also voluntary unilateral commitments and goals set by companies. Well, this is a nightmare. It is the current situation. Maybe we have to understand which is the role of each of these part of the chart. Well, so one positive consequence and a negative, very negative consequence. We get from this situation, from this landscape, a great problem for manufacturers, especially for SMEs, for small, medium-sized companies. Why? We see many companies that that want and can be compliant with this new paradigm, right? But simply they can get out from this maze. They can receive 20, 30 different requests of compliance by brands. Then someone asks for ZDFC compliance. You have to work with the gateway of ZDFC, a number of things. So they don't understand, and they have costs, because for each of different requirements, you have to demonstrate it with chemicals test. And the business, I don't know if there is any representative of chemical labs here, maybe, yes, no? Well, it is a booming market, In these days, here in Italy, we have mergers, acquisitions, investments, and all of these things. Well, so we have a big problem, right? Well, last point, so how can we get out from this situation? First, we need tools to help SMEs to understand this maze, this situation. We at Blumine, with a project financed by the Lombardy regional government, have been working on a tool for that. That's as the only very simple and basic aim to say, okay, do you have a chemical test on your fabric, your yarn, or your water waste? Just upload it, and we tell you if you are compliant with which requirement of brands, certification, etc. Or you can understand how far you are from them. So, to sum up, I started telling you that manufacturing companies have been under pressure. They got a burden to be compliant with the new request. But technology helps. If we will be able to solve the maze I've been talking about, the new processes will be easier to adopt by even small, medium-sized companies. So it was purely a burden. Just a few years later, now we are in a situation where it can be an opportunity. As I told you, you have to. There is no way to escape this point. So an opportunity to compete. And by the way, if you talk about chemicals, you talk about circular economy. If you don't have a clean production process, with circular economy, you are putting in circulation harmful chemicals. You have to clean your production in order to be circular. It's about transparency, because the main way to address this point is to use new technologies to show to the consumer, to your customer, what you are using. And the best way is digital. So we have also digital. Well, and by the way, the last one, but not the less important, it's about humans, okay? This way, we will be able to enjoy the marvelous fashion excitement with a healthier and better world. Thank you.
Thank you.